As a premier community in Hampton Roads, James City County strives to maintain a high quality of life for all citizens through sound fiscal management and legislative actions. In an ongoing effort to increase transparency, your Board of Supervisors holds public meetings to garner citizen input before making important decisions. Here is tonight's meeting agenda. Stay tuned. The Board of Supervisors meeting will begin shortly.
Call this meeting of the James City County Board of Supervisors regular meeting to order. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Stevens. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
If you would please call the roll.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Knoll?
Present.
Ms. Knoll represents the Stonehouse District. Mr. Eisenhower?
Here.
Mr. Eisenhower is our vice chair and represents the Jamestown District. No. Let me come back. Vice chair of the board represents, got my wrong notes. Let me pull this back up.
Jamestown, that's right.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Whew,
Mr. Hipple is Powhatan.
Mr. Hipple represents the Paladin District. Mr. McGlennon?
Here.
Mr. McGlennon represents the Roberts District. Ms. Larson?
Here.
Ms. Larson represents the Berkeley District and is chair of the board. Sitting to my far left is Adam Kinsman, County Attorney. I'm Scott Stevens, County Administrator. It's my pleasure to be clerk to the board.
I guess in how many years? That's the first time. You got a pretty good record.
All
so.
right. Well, thank you for that.
We will have a moment of silence, followed by a Pledge of Allegiance. And our pledge leader this evening will be introduced by Supervisor McGlennon.
Thank you very much. And tonight's pledge leader is Tony Velasquez Menivar, who is a fifth grade student at Laurel Lane Elementary School. Toby's here tonight with his brother and his father, and he enjoys playing the violin and aspires to be an engineer one day. And I think we all know that STEM and music go together very well, and I'm sure that'll bring him great success. So, Toby, if you would come up here and after a moment of silence, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Toby, if you'd come up, I've got a couple of things for you. This is a certificate to thank you for coming tonight, and a pin and our new logo. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Toby.
Doesn't look like Toby's a Mets fan, so. That brings us to public comment. Do we have any speakers this evening? All right. Thank you. We do not have a consent calendar this evening. We begin with our public hearings. Our Planning Commission representative this evening is Tim O'Connor. Thanks for coming out, Tim. Appreciate it. Our first public hearing is Z230006 SUP-23-0025 Brickyard Landing Park Rezoning and Special Use Permit. Hello, Ben. Ben will give us our staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Board of Supervisors.
Mr. Alistair Perkinson, Parks Administrator for the Parks and Recreation Department, has submitted a request to rezone 1006 Brickyard Road to PL Public Lands with a special use permit to allow for a community recreation facility. The subject properties are located at 1006 and 990 Brickyard Road, zoned PL Public Lands and A1 General Agriculture, classified as community character, conservation, open space, or recreation on the 2045 Comprehensive Plan, and located outside the primary service area. Section 15.2-2232 of the Code of Virginia states, in part, that no public facility be allowed unless the Planning Commission finds the location of the facility substantially consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan. As previously stated, the proposed park location is located inside the land use designation for this use, meaning it is consistent. At the December 6, 2023 regular meeting, the Planning Commission voted 7-0 to recommend approval of this rezoning and SUP request to the Board of Supervisors, subject to the proposed conditions. They also found it substantially in accordance with the adopted comprehensive plan. Staff finds the proposed conditions will mitigate impacts to surrounding properties and development. Staff also finds that this proposal is compatible with surrounding zoning and development and is generally consistent with the 2045 Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Ordinance. Taking all factors favorable into account, staff recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve this application subject to the proposed conditions. Thank you for your time this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and Mr. Perkinson is also available.
Any questions for staff at this time? All right, Mr. O'Connor? Thank you.
Speak loud.
Sure.
Good evening, members of the board. How are you this evening? Not much to add to this. It's pretty straightforward. I think that everybody in the Planning Commission thought this was a really good use and a really good improvement at Brickyard Landing, and obviously found it consistent with the comprehensive plan, given the desire for recreational facilities throughout the entire county. So happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. O'Connor? All right, thank you very much. With that, we will open the public hearing. Are there any?
No, ma'am.
All right, with that, we will close the public hearing, and I'll look to the board for discussion and/or a motion.
Motion for approval?
Thank you. Mr. Stevens?
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Null? Aye. Mr. Hippel? Aye. Mr. McGlinnan? Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. That brings us to S22-0027-4525, William Bedford Parcel Designation Change. Paxton, how are you this evening? Good.
Good. Madam Chair and members of the board, Mr. Vernon Getty has applied on behalf of Mrs. Joanna Coronado to vacate the recreation area designation of 4525 William Bedford, as shown on the subdivision plat entitled Chenko's Grant, Section 2 Subdivision Plat. This parcel is approximately 3/4 of an acre, zoned R8 Rural Residential, and designated Low-Density Residential on the 2045 Comprehensive Plan. The lot was recorded along with the Declaration of Covenants and Restrictions for Chenko's Grant Section 2. Article 3 of this declaration stated that the common area is to be managed and controlled by a homeowners association. However, it is staff's understanding that one was never formed. The developer of Chenko's Grant held on to the lot until 2004, when it was purchased at a public auction. In 2009, Mr. and Mrs. Coronado requested to vacate the plat, and that application was ultimately denied on October 27, 2009. Pursuant to Code of Virginia Section 15.2-2272, a portion of a recorded plat may be vacated by ordinance of the governing body of the locality in which the land shown on the plat, or part thereof, to be vacated lies. If this plat vacation is approved, the parcel would become a numbered lot, which would allow for a single-family dwelling to be built on the lot. Staff recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve this request to vacate the recreation area in Section 2 of Chenko's Grant. Since the agenda packet was published, and as of this afternoon, staff has received additional public input. A copy of these 3 documents are available for you at your seat. I'm also happy to answer any questions you may have, and the applicant is available as well. Thank you.
Are there questions? All right, thank you. May come back at some point. With that, there is no PC report on this, so we will open the public hearing. And with that, Vernon Getty, the applicant representative. Good evening, Mr. Getty.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. I'm Vernon Getty of 1177 Jamestown Road, here tonight representing Joanna Coronado, who unfortunately could not be here tonight. She has to work. Yes, I'm sorry. I will try. I think Paxton laid out some of the facts. I know a couple of you are very familiar with this and that you were on the board in 2009 when it originally came up. The bottom line is the original developer here didn't do anything they were supposed to do. This recreation area would be considered common area, which under the declaration was to be conveyed to the homeowners association, which was never formed. It was to be maintained, managed by the association, and real estate taxes and insurance premiums were to be paid on it by the association. None of that happened, and the original developer, in fact, stopped paying the real estate taxes on it. So in 2004, the county brought a suit to collect taxes, and which resulted in the property being auctioned at the courthouse steps and purchased in 2004 by the Coronados. In 2009, they brought forth a similar request, which the board ultimately denied. At that point, there was a lot of discussion about in the wider Chanco's Grant community about forming an association or some entity to take this property over. It's been 14 years and that has not happened. What has happened is the declaration of covenants for this section of Chanco's Grant had a set 35-year term, which is somewhat unusual, but that's what it says. It was recorded in 1987, so it expired in 2022. So there are no covenants in effect. There's no homeowners association. I think it's safe to say this will never be a recreation area. And we would submit to you the construction of one single-family house would be entirely consistent with the neighborhood, with the comprehensive plan, and put this property into productive use. No one has any rights into it now other than the owner. So we would ask you to approve Ms. Coronado's request. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
So my understanding is it's not just, it's all of the covenants, everything that was.
Everything.
Everything.
Everything's gone.
All went away.
Yep.
At the end of the 35-year period.
That's right.
And so for the last couple of years, it's not been in existence. Okay.
Exactly.
One question I had was in 2009, when it was turned down, if there had been a homeowners association established at that point,
Right.
would the current owner have been willing to negotiate with, because at that point there were no rights
Right.
other than hers, because she bought the home in the auction, so she was the one that had the permission
owned
to
it.
be on the property.
Nobody else has ever had any ownership interest in the lot.
Okay, so would she have been willing to negotiate at that point if there had been an HOA, or you can't say really?
Speculate.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Getty, I see on the map that lot is larger than most. And so we're not going to come back later if this does get approved and try to split it and make two lots.
Certainly not Mrs. Coronado, no. And if that were to be a condition of this, that'd be fine with her.
It'd be recorded as one single lot.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. Todd Cox.
Good evening, Todd Cox, 2908 Richard Grove South. I live in the Chanco's Grant neighborhood. That property backs up to mine. I'm here to speak about S220027 affecting the property located at 4525 William Bedford. I do not support the vacation of the term recreation area from the plat in order to in effect rezone and build this house there. My decision is based on three main things. I think there was a possible procedural errors because in 2009, when this came up, there were signs that were placed out there. There are no signs there. To this day, there's no signs there. Only one letter was sent to myself via the USPS. Had that not arrived, I wouldn't even know this was happening. Second thing is this came about in 2007, like the gentleman previous spoke, and I'll reference S0012-2009. It was brought up in July and then again in October. To save some time, I highlighted a couple of things. The land was auctioned and sold due to back taxes from the developer. The current landowner purchased it knowing it had to be rezoned to build a house. They had no intent on keeping this as a green space or a recreation area. In the past, HOAs were not always mandatory prior to development's completion. Verbiage states that the land does in fact belong to the residents of the neighborhood. It was acknowledged by members of our board. It has already been acknowledged by the members of the board that homeowners in Chanco's Grant have a share in the property, and that share would not go away. An HOA may be formed, but it was not mandatory. The neighborhood did not have a financial obligation to purchase the land, and then per the meeting, a decision to not vacate that term was decided, and I thank you for that. If by chance the Board of Supervisors decides to change their mind tonight, I feel they would be in conflict with JCC's own code, section 24-242, open space within major subdivisions, subsection A, which specifically states, within every subdivision consisting of 50 or more lots, there shall be planned and set aside permanently an amount of space to be maintained exclusively for conservation and recreation purposes. This neighborhood has over 50 lots, and the acreage formula that was just referenced about the 0.75 is the breakdown of how many lots per that's in the neighborhood and how that gets divided and how that space gets developed. And I'd also like to say, I have in good faith tried to reach out to the landowner, once through a realtor, and it was like a dead-end lead. There was no contact. I've emailed her, and I didn't want to go overboard, so I emailed her, and there's been no response on that either. So, and just to discuss it, and I know that are some members that are aware that there's been some conversation about that within the community, just to have conversation. What is the underlying issue? Do they want to buy or have the land and truly build a house? Would they be satisfactory in selling the property as is? And how would the county go about handling all of this? Because if we reference all the way back to 2009, there's a whole lot of errors that happened that brought us here in the first place. And I'd also like to say, I asked about the 35-year termination of that. I have not been provided any documentation that proves any of that even existed, the covenants or anything. The only documentation that's on there is the current letters or requests to vacate that term. But I don't see anything where there's a covenant, and I would love to be provided that prior to, making a decision on there. With all that stated, I asked to request to vacate the recreation area term from the plat, again, be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Frederick Smith.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Dr. Frederick Smith. I'm at 2901 John Proctor West. I don't have anything to add to the wonderful comments from my neighbor, other than to say I'm happy that we would like to see more transparency. I believe that's a concern within our neighborhood in general, with a lot of the issues going on these days. And that is it. Thank you.
Dylan Tuup, I'm not 100% I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, tulip, just like the flower.
Oh, okay, I didn't see the L, sorry.
It's okay, it was written in a hurry. I just got here in time, so thank you. Thank you for hearing me. I reside on the property adjacent to Todd, right behind this property. I look at it every morning making coffee with my son. I don't have anything really eloquent written. In fact, today I didn't really believe I would make it in here in time, but 64 was nice to me. What I would ask is, my wife and I moved in this neighborhood in Chenkos Grant about 3 years ago, got married, had very quickly expanded our family, and we have come to very much value these green spaces and appreciate what James City County does to protect them and grow them. We are avid users of Kidsburg, or quite often my son falls off the slides there, and it's a lot of fun. What I would ask, Todd laid out very eloquently the legalities behind it. I'm here as just an opinion, a voice, a concerned neighbor, citizen. From the 3 years that we've lived in this neighborhood, in fact, recently, about 2 months ago, we have seen a community in the neighborhood form around some other development that's potentially happening that I've never seen Chenkos Grant even have. I didn't even know many of these people lived in Chenkos Grant. So we're all kind of coming out, having neighborhood meetings, and really starting to develop that community. And I'm not to say that there's an HOA. I don't think many people would fight that HOA guidance, but there's more community aspect than there was in 2009. I can guarantee you that. I value the green space. I stare at the deer every day. There's like 12 deer that come out of that space. The owls attack me when they mate back there, and the owls attack me when I mow my grass. We value the green space. We value the quiet. Whether known or not, many kids in the neighborhood use that space. I don't know if that's really known, and if so, I'm sorry, they play on your land. But they do. And kids love exploring in the woods. And without it, I would hate to see that kind of imagination kind of struck from them, and that safe space that they can go in the neighborhood without having to cross a very busy road. So sorry it's not more eloquent. I appreciate your time, and I hope you guys make the decision that supports us. Thank you.
Mary Pugh.
My name is Mary Pugh, and I live at 2908 Francis Chapman West. I have some concerns, and I'm just going to read a list if that's okay. When they start building, first of all, my property values, my house is all I have, and my property values will drop by a third probably as soon as we finish this, or you make your decision. And then when they start building, it's going to be down by at least a half. And that upsets me. I'm upset about the water and sewage is going to have to be extended to them. That's going to take money. And there's an effect. We have built a sidewalk to Richmond, and is it going to tear that up? I guess you could say I have mostly questions. And the effect that it's going to have on Powhatan Creek, and have they shown any reports about this? And would the EPA sanction this, or is it going to be a huge problem, especially as global warming keeps coming up? And I live not in the floodplain. My next door neighbor is in the floodplain, and it's a very fine line there. And so I'm a little worried that I won't be able to say waterfront property, but I've got to buy flood insurance. There's going to be a huge effect on Jamestown High School and Clara Barton Elementary School. And on the buses, there'll have to be, it'll be have an effect on the fire stations and so many police and libraries that you have to have in our county. And I live right by the water plant. I'm nervous and I can't remember the word, but it's right behind me. And I believe that its aquifer is the Powhatan River. Has anybody told them that we're going to be putting more people there and sucking up more of their water? And a huge problem is that there's only one road in and one road out. And people that have to leave at 6 or whatever, and kids have to get on the buses. And the traffic, what is it, going to quadruple? And we're going to have to increase our infrastructure and our water and electricity. And I mean, I assume that's going to raise my taxes. And it's about all I can handle right now. I would.
So Mrs. Pugh, I think what you're referring to is probably the possible rezoning of the space, the larger space in your neighborhood, which we are not undertaking this evening. We are only considering the one lot that would change from recreation to residential. We don't have a date yet for that application to come before us, and I don't think we know when it would come before the Planning Commission either. So we are tonight only considering the change of one lot. The two are not intermingled.
Can I see where the lot is? I haven't been able to read the map that's been
If someone can,
circulating.
if you can come over, okay, we're gonna put it up here.
All right. We're back to our little recreation area, which my deed says we're required to have. And I have always been grateful to it being there. And we're a close-knit bunch of people. We kind of keep to ourselves, but boy, when something happens like a hurricane or whatever, we're all bound together, taking care of each other. As far as the HOA is concerned, we're such a small little bunch that one of the reasons why I moved there was I didn't have to pay money on a HOA. And that's, I'm sorry, that's the Homeowners Association. And I just kind of feel like we don't need one because when things happen, we're all together. And I think it should stay green space. For one thing, people can't watch me and I can't watch them, and that is very, very valuable. And I moved there because I could live, quote, in the woods and not have noise and stuff all around me. And so in addition to all that other stuff I said, that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Just give me one moment to get mine. And look to the board for discussion or motion. Perhaps could I start with Adam?
That was going to be my
Adam.
next thing.
So, question being, the last speaker mentioned the deed. Then there was also the question about the open space with the number of lots. Can you address those two issues?
I'll go for let's go for the recorded covenants, and then I will probably pass the analysis of the open space over to Paul or Christie on that one. So I do have a copy, and I'm happy to give it to the gentleman over there. Regarding the duration, it says in Article 10, Section 1, the covenants and restrictions of this declaration shall run with and bind the land for a term of 35 years from the date this declaration is recorded. And it was recorded in 1987, so it is expired. So whatever interest the property owners out there may have had in that recreation lot, it has now expired. One other thing that was mentioned was that there are none of our red rezoning signs out there. That is not required by the Virginia Code. We've done it for a very long time, and we stopped doing that, I want to say about a year ago. But that's not required of the code, and so we did the required, that which was required by the Virginia Code for public notice.
Okay.
going to try to address the 50-lot subdivision and the requirement of the open space.
Do you mind introducing yourself?
Oh, sure. I'm
Chrissy?
Christy Parrish, zoning administrator for James City County.
Thank you.
If I remember correctly, this subdivision was created prior to that requirement. So if it were a new major subdivision coming in today, they would be required to have a certain amount of open space. This development was done prior to that, and I believe, if I remember correctly, when the time the subdivision came through, the subdivision committee, which we don't typically have now, required that recreational lot, but that itself was not required at the time of subdivision. I believe I have that correct. But if it were developed today, they would have that requirement.
Thank you.
Can I have one other question for Adam? When this was done, the covenants that have now expired did require the developer to set up an HOA. Would that have been a mandatory HOA or a voluntary one? Do you know? I mean, I don't know what law that was under as to whether that was, because I know later on we got a lot of developments. You know, you've got a HOA as a required mandatory HOA. So I'm just trying to get a feel for what the expectation of that HOA that never occurred would have been.
Give me just a few minutes to read through the documents. I'll be happy to do it.
Okay. And while he's doing that, I would come back and mention that I think John and I were on the board when this came to us before, and we had I went back and reread all of the minutes and all of the comments from all of the citizens who came out in the community, and one of the reasons, I think, if I remember correctly, we went from one meeting to a couple of months later until we finally turned it down, was because we wanted to give the community the opportunity at that time to deal with the potential of a voluntary HOA, because the open space, which belonged to an individual, but they wanted to try to work out some sort of a deal. We wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity for them to maybe form an HOA, because for that piece of property to exist, it had to be taxes paid upon it, whether it was by an HOA or whether it was by an individual that owns it right now. And so I think our goal was to give them the opportunity to take those steps if they could to try to set this up as a permanent piece of property for the community. Unfortunately, that didn't occur. And at the time, I think when we did this, I did not know about this 35-year. We were operating under the assumption that it was going to be a permanent covenants that were on the land. So I'm a little surprised. Brings me back to concerns about how we set up these communities and what we expect and what actually does occur, because what occurred was not what we expected. And gives me pause about going in the future, dealing with other things about how we can ensure that some of these things occur as they are supposed to. So anyway, I'll wait until I can hear back from.
I think that the tough part is that in 2009, but even by denying it, but it wasn't owned it was owned by an individual who had no obligation. I understand that it's put in there as a rec, but they didn't have any obligation to then turn it back over had there been a civic association or an HOA formed. And there hasn't been, and you don't need a developer in order to form. You can form one on your own in a neighborhood. And so we do have someone that has been paying taxes on the piece of property, the owner has been, and in one of my conversations with Adam, after finding out that the declaration of recreation expired in May of 22, it's going to keep, if the owner owns, they're going to keep bringing it forward in order to ask for a rezoning, or a change of destination, excuse me. because they own the property and they've owned it since 2004, and there's not been a civic association or a homeowners association formed. So at some point, it's going to become most likely a change of designation, excuse me. And so, and right now, with all due respect, kids shouldn't be on it because it's owned by an individual owner. And if it were to be denied, they have every right to go put up a fence on it tomorrow, or if they could have done that already. So the only people that can be on that property are the owners of that property. That is my understanding from talking to the county attorney. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And Mr. Eisenhower, I admit I'm skimming as quick as I can. It's about 19 pages of what appears to be the smallest font possible to record. Suddenly I realized that 1.5 might not be enough. It looked like it set up an association, and it looked like everybody was a part of that association. And it's hard to say because it's so different than what associations are now. Yeah. Associations control everything. This one was a very rudimentary one where it just said, hey, you're responsible for all the common area. It made a definition of a common area, which I believe probably included that recreation lot, and said, hey, this is what people are supposed to take care of out there. You can be assessed some fees to take care of these things. And it also said the developer is supposed to give that lot to the HOA at some point, I think it was within 5 years, and just didn't do it. And whatever rights were conferred back then, it's done upon the expiration of these covenants.
Okay. So the HOA, basically, which they expected, was never really formed. Is that correct?
I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
It was legally formed within this document. Whether it was actually formed or not, I don't know.
Well, I've experienced this with other communities in my district where they had a functioning HOA, and essentially it went defunct because nobody would step forward and run, and you know, so we have that kind of a problem with some of the, especially smaller communities. So, okay, thank you.
Question for Jim and John. Y'all were on the board at the time, so I'm gonna kind of lean to y'all's knowledge. When y'all made your decision, or the whole board made a decision, was it a decision at that time not to change the designation because there was a potential that maybe there could be an HOA formed, and now 14 years later, we're the same place you were in 2009 with nothing happening? Yeah. And, and also we're adding 35 years of existence and nothing has happened. And I see that, we've got an owner that owns the property and wants to use it as a single lot and put a house on it. And I think we're kind of, in a way, denying that avenue as well. But, were y'all's hope at that time that there would form a homeowner association?
Yes, sir. And I think if you look in the minutes of that meeting, that it will tell you that that was the expectation, the hope, because there were a number of residents of the neighborhood who said they wanted to do something collectively about that parcel of land, that seemed like there was some momentum behind it, but it has not played out over the years. There really hasn't been any significant effort to come together as a neighborhood association, a homeowners association, whatever you want to call it. And obviously these organizations have lots of different levels and amounts of involvement. I live in a neighborhood with a mandatory homeowners association that was developed about the same time as Chanco's grant, and our dues are $10 a month that support maintaining common area and a playground and the like. But unfortunately, this neighborhood's interest in 2009 didn't develop into an organization that could take some steps to, perhaps offer to purchase the property from the folks who had bought it at auction. So it's a real challenge.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
How I see it is, along with Ms. Larson, these people bought the property, they bought it at auction, they have title to it. Everything else is null and void at this point. It's their property and they have the right to do with it as per the subdivision.
The question there, this is for one, I guess I'm Paxton, I guess I'm looking to you. If you would come back up to this will be for a single one house, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I think Mr. Hippel had asked that there won't be any splitting or anything like that. Will there be just for one house?
Yes, and they wouldn't be able to subdivide it either due to the area requirements for that zoning district now. So it's legally non-conforming with the size that it is.
Thank you. Okay, any more discussion or motion?
Make a motion for approval to make the change to that lot, to make it a single-family lot.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens?
Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel? Aye. Mr. McGlennon?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That brings us to SUP-23-0022 Westport Subdivision, tie-in to James City County Service Authority. SUP-23-0023 Liberty Ridge Subdivision, tie-in to James City Service Authority. It's my understanding that staff will do a joint presentation on these two items before holding separate public hearings.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board.
Very sorry, didn't introduce you.
Oh.
Terry to give the joint presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. Ms. Carlin Owens, on behalf of James City Service Authority, also known as JCSA, has applied for 2 special use permits to install 2 water main connections within the Westport and Liberty Ridge subdivisions. The purpose of these installations is to connect the 2 independent well systems to the JCSA's central system. Both the Westport and Liberty Ridge subdivisions are by right major subdivisions that are zoned A1, general agricultural, with the majority of the lots outside the primary service area and designated rural lands. As by right subdivisions outside the PSA, a central well system was required at the time of plan development. The proposed locations of both water main extensions will be within the street right-of-ways, and both locations are also include areas outside and inside the PSA. Per JCSA, the following benefits will result in these connections: additional redundancy in available fire flows for these 2 subdivisions, fewer permits to maintain, which would streamline sampling and reporting requirements. Water from these 2 subdivisions is less costly to produce and will reduce the load from the Five Forks water treatment plant, and it will also allow JCSA to remove the W4 well facility from service, eliminating significant investment in rehabilitation. The county's utility policy strongly discourages utility extensions outside the PSA. Extensions of water and sewer facilities outside the PSA have predominantly served a significant public purpose, addressed health and safety situations for existing communities, or improved utility service within the PSA. Staff finds the extensions of a public utility outside the PSA is inconsistent with the land use goals, strategies, and actions of the 2045 Comprehensive Plan. Due to the inconsistency with the adopted comprehensive plan in the county's utility policy, staff is unable to recommend approval of these applications. According to Virginia Code Section 15.2-2232, unless a utility facility is shown on the adopted comprehensive plan or other master plans for the county, the local planning commission shall review to determine whether the location, character, and extent of the project is consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission voted 5-2 to find these proposals consistent with the comprehensive plan. At its December 6th meeting, the Planning Commission recommended approval of these applications by a vote of 5-2. Should the Board of Supervisors approve these applications, staff has provided conditions to mitigate potential impacts and prevent further expansion of public and water and sewer outside the PSA. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and representatives from JCSA are also available. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from Ms. Costello at this point? All right. Mr. Powell? And then Mr. O'Connor, I'll ready.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Doug Powell. I'm the General Manager of the JCSA, address 119 Tuning Road. With me tonight is Carlin Owens, our water engineer. I'm going to speak to both of these special use permit requests tonight together. Understand the requests are a little bit unusual, but there are some significant and important benefits to JCSA's customers if the requests for the SUPs are approved. Before I address the SUPs themselves, I think it would be helpful to discuss how the JCSA's water system operates. JCSA's water system is comprised of the central system, which is our predominant part of our system, and then 8 of what we call independent systems. The JCSA central system is denoted on this map in blue, and the population served by the central system is approximately 60,000. As you know, our water source is groundwater, and the primary source of our water is the Five Forks Water Treatment Plant, which is located right there. However, there are other smaller production wells located throughout the service area that provide water, and those are denoted with the blue dots that you see here, 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 and so on. The 8 independent systems are located in different areas of the county, but all outside the primary service area, or PSA. These 8 wells are denoted in green on the map, and you see there's some up here. And then the 2 that are the subject of the SUPs tonight, Liberty Ridge and Westport, are located right here. While none of these independent systems are connected to the central system, Liberty Ridge and Westport are directly adjacent to the central system and also directly adjacent to the PSA along Centerville Road. For each of these 2 independent systems, JCSA proposes to connect them to the central system. For Liberty Ridge, connecting it to the central system would entail the installation of 240 feet of new water main right there in red, and would note that the entirety of this 240 feet of new pipe is completely within the PSA, and then there's another 400 feet of pipe that would need to be upsized. For Westport, connecting the central system would entail the installation of 250 feet, also denoted in red right here, 250 feet of new water main, all but 50 feet within the PSA. So there's several reasons the JCSA is coming forward with these requests now. One of the main reasons for making this request now is that one of our older well facilities, known as W4, and I'll go back to this map. W4 is right here near the pottery, and as you can see, it's relatively close to the Westport and Liberty Ridge wells as well. That well facility is in need of rehabilitation at an estimated cost of about $1 million. Consolidating the Liberty Ridge and Westport wells into the central system would allow us to take W4 offline and avoid the $1 million expense, and at the same time maintain current capacity. We're also adding corrosion control to all of our central system wells, and taking W4 offline now will mean that we can avoid the cost of adding corrosion control to W4 as well. And then finally, JCSA undertook a multi-year effort to identify vulnerabilities and risks to its systems, and W4, with its location near the rail line and difficult access, was identified as a vulnerability. It's important to note that public utilities already exist outside the PSA, and they were approved through the planning process. Liberty Ridge and Westport are already served by public water lines that are owned and operated by the JCSA. If the SUPs are approved with the conditions recommended by the planning staff, no other lots can connect to the JCSA water line other than lots that are already platted without an SUP amendment. The staff report indicates that other extensions have been previously approved when sufficient public benefit has existed. JCSA believes sufficient public benefit exists in this circumstance, which is the reason this project is being proposed. Consolidating these 2 systems into the central system will result in improved public health and safety and provide significant operational benefits and efficiencies in the following ways. Additional redundancy and improved fire protection for Liberty Ridge, Westport, and portions of the central system in close proximity to these connections. Adding the Liberty Ridge and Westport facilities will also allow JCSA to avoid rehabilitation expenses associated with an older well, as previously described. It will allow us to maintain current capacity at a lower cost. Consolidating Liberty Ridge and Westport will result in fewer DEQ permits and fewer Virginia Department of Health permits, streamlining sampling and reporting requirements. Water produced at the Liberty Ridge and Westport facilities is less costly than water produced by the Five Forks Water Treatment Plant. The additional capacity of these wells will reduce the load on the Five Forks Water Treatment Plant, thereby reducing overall cost to operate the system. And finally, there are significant costs associated with the operation of independent water systems, and the small independent systems operate at a loss due to limited customer base. Operation of the Liberty Ridge and Westport systems is currently subsidized by central system customers, and tying them into the central system will reduce the subsidization. I would note that there are several goals listed in the staff report as benefits to the PSA utility policy that are achieved by consolidating these systems, including the efficient utilization of public facilities and services to help ensure that such facilities and services are available where and when needed, and to increase the public benefit per dollar spent. Sorry. In closing, this request, if approved with the conditions in the planning staff report, does not facilitate further development. Other than lots already platted, no other lots can connect to the JCSA water line without an SUP amendment. Therefore, the spirit, intent, and goals of the PSA are preserved while at the same time achieving significant health, safety, and operational improvements for the JCSA system and its customers. Thank you for your consideration of these requests. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Powell?
Yeah, I have a few. Basically, by allowing these subdivisions to have their own well system, we end up at the end having to take them over at a loss to James City County. And I still struggle with that, allowing, a subdivision to be built and a well system be put in, and then eventually it gets put on the back of our people that are using the system now. I see where there's benefits here. I mean, we're already paid to piper, but there are some benefits by tying in. But, it's almost, as I've heard on this board more than one time, death by 1,000 cuts, little by little, and it changes the whole picture of what James City County is. I know Liberty Ridge has had trouble with losing some lots and that sort of thing, and trying to figure that out. Those lots that have been lost or possibly lost are not included in this?
And I'm not sure exactly what lots you're referring to, but if they're not currently platted, they could not be served without an SUP amendment. So only lots that are currently platted can be served by the JCSA water line.
Adam, the window for those certain lots, they're platted, but they miss the window on those lots, but they're trying to work that out, or would that be included in this? Because that could change the numbers.
They're not platted.
They're not considered platted anymore.
No, sir.
Okay. All right. They were platted at one time, right? They're not now, or they never became platted?
They were never platted, sir.
Okay. They were just possibilities. Okay. All right. I just want to make sure there wasn't more hanging out there that we were unaware of. Not that anybody would do that. I'm just, knew they were out there. So it still bothers me that the central well systems, because I can nestle up next to the PSA and put a central well system in, and this is going to be a great thing. And y'all all believe me, it's going to be wonderful, and it's going to be wonderful for everybody. And then all of a sudden you have to take it over, which means we have to take it over, which means our citizens have to take it over. And that great deal has all of a sudden become a burden. And some way we've got to figure out how we're going to tax our citizens extra for these other lots. So that's just my 2 cents on the central well system. Still worries me to this day on that item. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. I know, I believe now that our latest change to policy is that major subdivision, they're just going to have to do their own wells. We're not going to have the central wells anymore. So that problem that we had, that we've inherited of all these different systems outside the PSA, it's still there, and especially the smaller ones really operate at a loss, and there's really no effective way to connect those. These two are the exception to the rule because it's just a couple hundred feet. They're nestled up right next to the PSA, and I don't have a problem approving this request, because what it does is it actually helps alleviate some of that burden that was being borne by the users of the JCSA, and it gives us some financial incentives. But I'm also very clear that because we are including these two, it's because of that proximity and because of that benefit to the consumers, that the independent lots that don't butt up to the PSA, where we would have to run an extended line, are not things that we're not setting a precedent in my mind. They're not economically viable for us to connect, at least at this time. If they do sometime in the future, it won't be us that's sitting here. But I think that I want to alleviate some concern, I think, about the fact that maybe we're setting a precedent to all these others that will want to try to connect. I don't think that's really very viable, but I can support these two.
I just want to clarify that my understanding is correct, that an amendment, as Mr. Powell, you mentioned a couple of times, that something can't happen without an amendment to the SUP. That's just this, right? I mean, it's just a public hearing and a vote by the board, which brought us to this point in the first place. So not really a very high hurdle, but and that's that's sort of ultimately the problem that I have with this. I understand the benefits to the JCSA. I think they're great, and it makes perfect sense to do that. But in the other cases, generally, there's been a broader public benefit in terms of health and safety and so forth that we can point to. And it's I'm glad Mr. Eisenhower made the points that he did about the unlikely event that this will be a precedent, but it doesn't make me happy.
Thank you. Mr. O'Connor? Evening again.
Evening again. I think Mr. Powell summed up our conversation quite well in his conclusion, so thank you. There was a discussion about whether or not this would be considered an extension of the PSA, and I think for some of us, we sort of likened it to the extension of sewer services out Jolly Pond Road to the schools. And then ultimately, JCSA asked us to come back and consider an SUP amendment to add Deer Park just to be able to improve water flow and quality to that line out behind Colonial Heritage. So I think at the end of the day, for the majority of the Planning Commission, they considered that the public benefit outweighed the restriction of the comp plan as far as not providing those services outside the PSA. And Mr. Hipple, we did remove that central well requirement, so we won't be seeing this again in future rural developments. So happy to answer any questions.
Anna? Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, with that, I will open the public hearing for the Westport subdivision. Are there any speakers? I will close the public hearing for the Westport subdivision. I'll look to the board for discussion and/or a motion.
Move approval of the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens?
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. Hipple?
Aye.
Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I will open the public hearing for the Liberty Ridge subdivision. Are there any speakers?
No, ma'am.
I will close the public hearing for the Liberty Ridge subdivision. I will look to the board for discussion and/or a motion.
I'll move the motion for Liberty Ridge as well.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens?
Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
That brings us to board considerations, SUP-23-0026, 206 The Maine, Detached Accessory Apartment. Tess Lynch will give the staff presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. At its January 9th, 2024 meeting, the board postponed this application due to concerns regarding the occupancy of the detached accessory apartment and the potential for future occupancy by a non-family member. The public hearing was closed at the initial meeting on January 9th, 2024. As a result of this concern, staff added, with the concurrence of the applicant, a new SUP condition addressing occupancy, and staff has confirmed with the applicant on behalf of the property owners that they would be willing to limit the occupancy of the single-family dwelling and accessory apartment to family members only. Therefore, staff continues to recommend approval of this application. Should the Board of Supervisors approve this application, staff has also included other proposed conditions to mitigate potential impacts. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and the applicant is also available. Thank you.
Any questions? I just had one question. If the, that I appreciate that they limit it to family. If they were to sell, would that go with the property, or would?
Yes, ma'am. The SUP conditions run with the land, so they would go to the next owner, so that the next owner would have to have family in that unit.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for staff?
Question, how would we know? You know, and it's family, cousins, relatives, what is defined, and how do we know? I mean, it's an honesty thing, and I'm sure the people are very honest and not questioning that at all. But the next owner, you know, it wouldn't be the owner today. Be the next owner is cousin Eddie in there next, and you know, I just, you know, was wondering.
Very fair question, and really to kind of get at that point for a property owner that might not, a future property owner, prospective property owner that might not otherwise track or keep up with the SUPs that the county has done it. We've added a condition in there to where if this is ultimately approved, this resolution would be recorded at the courthouse. So upon any document search, any title search, this would show up there. And to your question, we have specifically defined immediate family as we have defined it in the subdivision ordinance, as we would use it for, say, family subdivisions. That's a very definitive and finite list of what family member means. It doesn't mean second cousin, third removed. It's parent, direct sibling, or child or grandparent. But that's very well defined. We've got a lot of history knowing what immediate family is. And like with any SUP conditions, upon complaint, staff would go out and to see whether or not all of the SUP conditions are being followed.
Okay, and this is for the second buyer, and it's just devil's advocate, basically. The second buyer buys it and does everything they're supposed to, and they're said, oh, by the way, you can rent this out. And they don't check at the courthouse, and nothing happens to come up at the time, and it's recorded down there, but it doesn't come up because they're just trusting on who they're buying from and whoever's maybe the agent is or whatever. And yeah, you can rent this out. This is, you know, extra income, and you can help with that. And then they go years and years renting until a neighbor says, wait a minute now, that's only supposed to be family. And you're renting to somebody we talked to is not family. And then they come to us and say, well, we didn't know that. And we didn't mean to break, we weren't breaking the law. We didn't know it. Just like we found out with the Airbnbs and all that people didn't realize it. So.
But for a complaint, there's not an easy way for us to pick that up.
Not.
Correct.
You know, not saying anybody's would do anything wrong or try to, it just, you know, it gets confusing and gets forgotten.
That's true for any uses across the county and SUP uses. I think where we have really benefited on the short-term rentals is the private sector has sort of come up with their own tracking system that we subscribe to that enables to pick that up. I'm not aware of a subscription-based service or any other sort of private sector business that has developed those tracking things for other SUP uses. Seems to be unique for that for now.
That's all.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'm just trying to recall, this is a new structure that's coming up now, as opposed to an existing one that's being converted, is that right? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
so they want to build a garage and then have the apartment on top.
And the use is essentially for their college-age student?
Yes.
Child to occupy? Who will, I mean, I don't know when the certificate of occupancy would be available, but I would guess it's probably a year or more down the line.
Exactly how long it would take.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I will look to the board for discussion and or a motion.
Motion for approval.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens?
Mr. McGlennon?
No.
Mr. Eisenhower? Ms. Null?
No.
Mr. Hippel?
No.
Ms. Larson?
No.
Motion fails.
Thank you. I will look to the board for a motion to reappoint Ms. Sharon McCarthy to the Middle Peninsula Juvenile Detention Commission for a term expiring on June 30, 2027.
So move.
Okay. Mr. Stevens, will you call the roll?
Ms. Null?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. McGlennon? Aye. Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to amend the board's adopted calendar to add a board retreat on March 2nd, 2024 at 8 a.m. at the Law Enforcement Center, 4600 Opportunity Way, Williamsburg, Virginia, James City County. Is there a
So
motion?
moved.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens?
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel? Aye. Mr. McGlennon? Aye. Ms. Null?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
With that, I'll look for board requests and directives. Ms. Knoll, if you want to start us off, if you're ready.
You don't have to. Good.
Okay.
I just had a couple of quick things. On Sunday, I attended service for Marion Oyer, the widow of Ed Oyer, who passed away 1 year and 1 day after Mr. Oyer passed away.
Oh, my goodness.
And had the opportunity to express our appreciation to the family for the good work that they've done. Ed and Marion had, of course, created a scholarship at what is now Virginia Peninsula Community College, and I got a chance to see a number of the indications of all the good work that she had done as volunteer at Eastern State Hospital, and so just wanted to acknowledge her passing. And secondly, mention that on February 1st, along with Ms. Larson and Mr. Eisenhower, Mr. Stevens attended the Virginia Association of Counties, Virginia Municipal League, Virginia Planning District Commission's annual local government day at the General Assembly, and found that, first of all, we had a great opportunity to meet with each of our legislators and to express our concern about some issues and appreciation for their support on some issues. I am especially glad that we had the opportunity to talk a little bit about some perhaps misunderstandings, as we have new representatives who don't necessarily have as full a knowledge of James City County and its policies and practices. It was a good opportunity to bring them up to speed on some of those areas. And I really think that the General Assembly's session this year looks like a number of issues that are of concern to us are probably going to be carried over, maybe referred to the Housing Commission or other study commissions, and I think that's a useful thing to keep an eye on over the course of the next several months until the next legislative session, and especially to thank our legislators for being attentive to the proposal to study the building of a bridge between Surrey and James City County, something that I don't think is a very good idea and which did not result in passage. I did want to say that the legislator who carried that issued a press release yesterday decrying the failure of the General Assembly to listen to the people. It would have been helpful if the legislator had contacted the people on this side of the water who would be significantly affected by that proposal before submitting study resolutions. So just wanted to say ferries forever.
Okay. I also saw that press release and had the same thoughts. So I do find it very interesting. You know, tonight there were some votes that I'm sure there were probably mixed feelings about, but there was an opportunity for the speakers to come out and speak to us this evening and share their thoughts and watch this in action. And I saw last week where the General Assembly basically told the people that were testifying to hurry up, not take much time. And I find it, you know, they already get a little bit of isolation because they're in Richmond, and it's not so easy to, because you can run into us at Harris Teeter or Food Lion or wherever, and we're always willing to hear and listen, and you can call us, do us email. I do find it very interesting, though, the number of things that are happening at the General Assembly level that are groups are trying to not have to come before this body. Solar, they want to be able to go to the General Assembly to find out whether or not they can build a big solar facility or a battery storage place, which could very well, you know, this is in my backyard. That very well could be in your backyard with absolutely the locality having zero an opinion on that or being able to render a decision. Short-term rentals. We have approved, I believe, 90%? Almost 90% of the short-term rentals that have come before us, but yet that's not good enough for that, the short-term rental people. They want to be able, they are now, and it passed the Senate today, to go before they can just don't have to worry about going to the locality to worry about getting approval. Which, and for us, what often happens, somewhat of what you heard this evening, where there's no HOAs, no civic associations, we often get put in that position because we have a lot of older neighborhoods. And so that would mean that next door to you could come a short-term rental of which you have absolutely no say because they have gone to the General Assembly and been given that power. And so that is often what we are working with our association, Virginia Association of Counties, to be able to push back against that and at least come to the locality. And if you're going to say that the localities are not approving those short-term rentals, don't say that about a locality that is approved 90%. So I've just found it's very frustrating to me when you have no campaign finance laws in Virginia and you can give a lot of money and you can get something heard. It's just very bothersome to me. And, you know, I think we have a pretty good record of listening and taking things under consideration. We have approved some solar. There's been one, I think, that we haven't, but for the most part, we have approved. So, but we are looking out for the citizens of this county, and the fact that that right could be taken away from this locality, I just find very, very upsetting and frankly, very scary. So, and I appreciate, this year, Mr. Kinsman and all we are doing. We have lobbyists in Richmond this year that are keeping us up to date. And I think it's more important than ever. So I appreciate all the work that my colleagues did on Advocacy Day. And I did go by in the afternoon and was able to meet. I wasn't able to meet with Senator McDougal, but I did get to see everyone else. But while we were up there, I attended the Chair Institute. Mr. Stevens and I presented, and so did Supervisor McGlennon, and I learned from both of you, as I always do. Great job. And it was kind of James City County Day at the Chair Institute, so that was nice too. Mr. Stevens and I did go meet with the Chair of York County and the County Administrator. We did talk about the issue that we have with traffic, how we might better work together, because as you know, there has been an approved on the Pottery property, which is going to be quite a bit of square footage and warehouse. So I think that they've talked to us about possibly working together on some VDOT applications, but we have told them that we are very concerned about the traffic issue, and we want to work together, and we hope that they are addressing it, and they do have some money in their CIP, so they are aware and working on it. So Mr. Hipple, thank you for that push to go meet with them, and we want to keep that conversation going for sure. Then we had a meeting. It was a staff-run meeting, but there was a meeting at the marina last week that talked about what the improvements are there, what's the possible future, and I thought Mr. Stevens and the Parks and Rec staff did an excellent job there. And we certainly will not please everybody once the final decisions are made, but we've made lots of progress. So with that, report of the County Administrator.
Madam Chair?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I thank you for meeting with York County and all, and because not only the apartments that they've already built, but the apartments on Old Moortown Road that they're building now. And if you get a chance to look over 199 and see those, that's a lot.
Yeah, we
It's
brought
like
that up.
5 or 6 stories high.
Yes.
And, and I've been told by several that they're not going to do a road study. And now I hope they do, and I hope what you found out is going to actually happen. But, they've approved these others without any additional road work at all. And those 2 sections of townhouses and apartments alone have crippled Lightfoot. And our citizens are the ones now stuck in traffic that can't get through anywhere on a Saturday. And, we have enough trouble with roads and transportation. There's never enough money. And, and now that we don't have the extra 3 or 0.3 cents to do our other secondary roads, we've lost that for probably a couple of years to try to get that back. But, that would have brought us $84 million in transportation and HR TAC. But, the biggest thing I think is just staying on York County as far as, look, if you're doing this, we're not going to tell you what to do in your community. It's your community. We understand that. But if we can look at the traffic and how it affects our community is all we're asking. How does what you're doing across the line affect what we're doing? Thank you for starting that and staying on. I appreciate that very much.
We're going to follow up also. But one other thing, I do want to send my condolences to my former colleague on the school board, Ms. Lisa Manuel. She lost her husband, David Shear, this past week. And I just want Elise to know that David was a city of Williamsburg resident, however, until the end of his life when he did live in James City County. And but I just want Elise to know that we're all thinking about her this evening. So
reports from me.
No reports. All right.
Well, since you don't have a report, let me report that you were the presenter at a major citizen conversation since our last meeting that attracted well over 100 county residents to learn about a number of issues like our government complex, solid waste, police and crime efforts to control crime in the community, and the sports center. I think it was a very informative night. There were some sharp expressions of opinion one way or another, but I think that was great that it allowed for the airing of concerns, opportunity to address those concerns, and I think at the end of the night, people left feeling like they had gotten a good bit of information and understood some of those issues much better. So thanks for doing that.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you. And again, I think it was a good exchange. I appreciated Mr. Reinheimer, our chief, being prepared to present that evening as well, and the staff that put it together, and you that were able to attend. So again, I think it was well worth our time, and we'll do some more of those.
I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to mention something. Sorry for jumping in on one more other thing. But, you know, we had some great citizens came out with some great questions and great concerns and all that, and that's wonderful. But to be rude to someone in a meeting is not acceptable. Whether that's how you're brought up or that's how you deal with things or how you handle things. Well, I can tell you there's ways I handle things too, but I don't bring them out in the public, and I don't talk to people in the way some of the people ended up having that conversation. And I was just embarrassed for James City County to some of the individuals that how they spoke. Now, I'm happy if you're upset or mad or angry for you to voice that and let us know. I'm not happy with this decision. I'm not happy with how this is going. I think we ought to look at it different ways, but respectfully. And there was a few, most were very respectable, but there were a few that went over that line, and I had to bite my tongue that night in order to not stand up and say that that's not the way you handle yourself in a public meeting. So I'd appreciate it from now on that, you know, those individuals know who you are, and yeah, I'm calling you out, and please refrain from that from the future. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. We have no closed session this evening. With that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment until 1 p.m. on February 27th, 2024 for our business meeting.
Move.
Mr. Stevens?
Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel? Aye. Mr. McGlennon? Aye. Mr. Eisenhower? Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Oh, do you have a gavel or, okay.
She got her own hammer.
All right, great.
This meeting of the James City Service Authority Board of Directors to order. Mr. Powell, please call the roll.
Mr. Hippel. Mr. McGlennon. Mr. Eisenhower.
Here.
Ms. Larson.
Here.
Ms. Knoll.
Here. Do we have any presentations? We have none.
No, ma'am.
Mr. Powell, any speaker cards?
No, ma'am.
Tonight's consent calendar consists of minutes adoption.
Move the adoption of the consent calendar.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. No public hearings this evening?
No, ma'am.
Okay, board considerations?
Yes, ma'am. One board consideration tonight. The resolution before you sets the public hearing for the fiscal year 25 utility rates for your April 9th meeting. Under the proposed rates, the fixed charge for wastewater based on a 5/8 inch meter would increase from $2 to $3.01, and the volumetric charge would increase from $3.11 per thousand gallons to $3.14 per thousand gallons. The fixed charge for water based on a 5/8 inch meter would increase from $6.02 to $7.52, and the Tier 1 volumetric rate would increase from $3.98 per thousand gallons to $4.20 per thousand gallons. If these rates are adopted, the total monthly water and sewer bill for a typical 5,000 gallon a month residential user would increase by $3.93 per month, from $46.71 to $50.64. These proposed rates are consistent with what you discussed in January at your retreat, and if approved, the combined bill would still remain the third lowest of all the 18 Hampton Roads localities. The proposed FY25 rate changes reflect increases above the 2020 rate study multi-year plan that JCSA has followed for the last 4 years. While the fixed rate and volumetric charge for water have increased incrementally each year since the 2020 plan, the last increase to either the fixed charge or volumetric rate for wastewater was in 2020. The FY25 budget preparation process revealed that JCSA can no longer follow the 2020 rate plan and still maintain adequate reserves and debt service coverage due to substantial cost increases in both the operating and capital budgets. Among the areas that JCSA is seeing the biggest cost increases are utilities, vehicles, construction, and supplies such as treatment chemicals. There are 2 other proposed rate changes. One is to increase the grinder pump maintenance agreement from $425 a year to $450 per year, and also the implementation of a new annual testing of backflow preventers fee of $15 to cover operational cost of the backflow and fats, oil, and grease programs, specifically to cover the cost of a new position needed to keep up with increased workload. Staff recommends approval of the resolution that authorizes the advertisement of the public hearing for April 9th, 2024 for changes in the water and wastewater fixed charges and service rates to go into effect July 1, 2024. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for staff? No? So I look to the board for
Not
discussion.
I'll move to set April 9th as the public hearing.
Sir, thank you.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson? Aye. Ms. Knoll?
Aye. Do you have any board requests and directives or discussions? No? So general manager's update?
Yes, ma'am. I do have a couple just brief items I wanted to mention. One is the Kingswood project. I'm happy to report is substantially complete. The only thing really remaining at this point is the paving of 2 roads in that subdivision. It's Spring Road and West Kingswood. Those roads are to be paved by VDOT. So JCSA's part of the project is complete, but those 2 roads are going to be paved by VDOT, and we don't know exactly when. But that is the status of the project.
Don't know exactly when, as in
forever?
or?
They have received bids.
Okay.
So I would assume it's going to be this spring, but I can't speak for VDOT, but that's what we've been told.
Why are they doing those 2 roads?
It's sort of been in a negotiation. They had a project planned for that neighborhood before we started with our plan for the utility improvements. And so it's sort of just, we've worked together. We took some of it, they took some of it because they were planning to do a project there anyway.
Maybe they have some extra money left over.
That's what I was just gonna say. So could they go do some others then?
I got a couple of targets
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Surface treatment.
No.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention is the new enterprise software system, the new billing system. It is scheduled to go live on March 25th, meaning that our customers will be getting their first new bill in early April that will be just the JCSA water and sewer bill on one bill and then getting a separate HRSD bill. So that project's been more than a year in the planning now, and it is scheduled to, as I say, go live the end of March. So we have a communication plan. Every JCSA customer should be receiving a postcard that's going to be mailed on February 22nd. So on February 22nd, postcards are going to go out to all JCSA customers, informing them of the change. Obviously, information about this change has been up on the website for quite some time. So there's the website, there's the postcard. There will be a insert in everyone's bill. The next bill they get will be their last combined bill. There's an insert in all of the bills that will explain that this new billing system is coming. For the paperless customers, they will be receiving an image through email of the bill insert. So everybody should be receiving that bill insert message, whether they get an actual bill or whether they get a paperless bill. We opted to do an insert instead of just a simple bill message because we felt like people would be more likely to read it than if it was just a message on the bill. In addition to that, we're going to do a blast email to all JCSA customers that we have email addresses for. And then, of course, there's the town hall meetings that are coming up in April, in which we'll be discussing the new billing as well. And then, as we get closer to April, we'll be doing some social media releases, and I'm planning to do some sort of press release for the print media as well. So that's our schedule and our communication plan.
Question. I'm on, auto pay. Assume that once the split occurs, my auto pay will still stay in effect for the HRSD portion. Will it transfer over to the JCSA, or will I have to initiate that anew?
So let me, I will confirm this, but I'm pretty sure that for the auto pay, you're going to have to re-enroll.
Okay.
And the instructions for that will be part of the first new bill.
Okay.
Everybody will receive their bill the same way they receive it now. So if you're getting a paper bill, you're going to get a paper bill. If you get it electronically, you're going to get it electronically. But my recollection is, so we've tried to set this up as much as we can so that it's just going to be business as usual for everybody. It's just going to be the same for everybody. But I'm pretty sure that for auto pay, it was determined that those customers are going to have to actually re-sign up, yes.
Okay. So now I need a motion to enter into closed session for the following: consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel, specifically the fees charged for grinder pump maintenance pursuant to section 2.2-3711A8 of the Code of Virginia.
So moved.
Mr. Hippel? Aye. Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower? Ms. Larson? And Ms. Knoll?
Aye. a motion to certify the closed session.
Move to certify that we only spoke about those items we indicated we would speak about in closed session.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower? Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Ms. Knoll?
Motion to adjourn.
Need a motion to adjourn until 5 p.m. on March 12th for the regular meeting. May I have a motion?
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank